Hello everyone, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Trent, the host of this channel, and I see we have some people in the chat here. Big Book Cafe, hello. Pac-Man CT, welcome back. Brian, still gray in UK, I guess. I remember last week it was gray too. It's a little gray here in Massachusetts, but it's all right, it's fall. Hector, Sekhmet Tara, and Dandy, welcome. Dandy, also from England. So thanks everyone for joining me today. For those who haven't joined before, usually what I do is I kind of start with some type of prepared topic about graphic design or Affinity programs or some other type of graphics design concept, and then I go into questions that I got on my videos from throughout the week. As I go through the first part, if you of course have any questions on that, feel free to ask. Sometimes I just do a Q&A, but today I thought I'd talk about this topic, which is the lighting filter in Affinity Photo. So this will be an Affinity Photo more centered topic. I guess I included all the icons here accidentally. Let me turn on my zoom tool. This is the thing I always forget. But yeah, as far as I know, this is just an Affinity Photo thing. So yeah, so we'll be talking about the lighting filter today. Hi Matrix Tech. And yeah, if you have any questions, certainly feel free to ask them in the chat. So kind of what is this lighting filter? Well, it's one of the live filters in Affinity Photo here. So we've talked about some of these over the past couple months or so. Various filters. The halftone filter is one we used a bunch, but this lighting one is actually pretty cool. So let's kind of look at an example here. So I have Affinity Photo, and kind of my, I guess, standard disclaimer for these filters is always there's the filters menu up here where you can access them. So I clicked filters up here, and you can see there's a lighting filter, but as you may know by now, a lot of these filters are destructive, so they'll permanently alter our image. The key fact of the live lighting filters, or the live filters down here, is the live word means that they're dynamic and they don't actually change our image. So I'll be using this button down here. There's also a way you can access the live filters up here. I never do it this way, but you can actually also, yeah, do it there if you like. But I like this one here. It's nice and easy to access. So let's look at a couple of kind of examples here. I'll just add a filter to start with, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about what it can do. But since it's a live filter, I'll just add this filter here. And we'll talk about these controls and everything. But as with all the filter properties, the reason it's nice to actually have it like this is you can turn it on and off. So you can do that. You can change the opacity like all the filters. And of course, you can also mask it. So this itself acts as a mask, but you can manually add a mask to it if you like. And that's kind of the way I like to do things, just because I find it a little more clear. So you can drag a mask there. If you didn't see what I just did, I clicked the mask button here. So this is for masking. And this is just standard stuff for all the filters. So it's kind of a nice common feature. And if I select black, I can just erase the effect of my part of my light if I want. And this is something that will be useful in some parts, because there are parts where the lighting is kind of affecting your whole image and you want to remove part of it. So I'll just delete this for now. Hi IH, hope things are going well there in Germany. So let's look at a couple different lighting types. The kind of the two most useful ones I think are spotlight and point light. So let's add a light here. So I'll go live filters, lighting. And you get this kind of big, confusing menu here that has lots of technical terms, but we'll go over them. So this is the live lighting controls here. And what you can do is you can actually add multiple lights using this one control, and that's this control down here. So it says light 1. So by default, you just have one light. I'll make it a spotlight here. So there's 3 different types of ones. Right now we have a spotlight, and I can change the direction of it. So let me move it under the spotlight control. And it kind of takes a little while to get used to like how these controls work a little bit. Like some of them, will rotate it, some will move it around, some will change the cone view. So you can see this is the effect that the spotlight is having. And it really does look like a spotlight, if you will. Like hence the name. It's kind of, you kind of want to think of it almost like as something that's outside of your screen, like as if you actually had a flashlight and you were pointing it at the screen. So that's what this one does. Now what I can do is I can actually add a second light. So I have light 1 here selected. I'm going to click the add button. So I'll click add. And now I have a second spotlight. Move it over here. Click and drag it. But actually, I don't want it to be a spotlight. I want it to be a point light. So let me change the type here. And I'll change the point. You can see it's very powerful here. But here we kind of have two examples of two different lighting types. And it's kind of, actually I think it's pretty useful, but there's tons of controls here, so we'll get into that. But just keep in mind that you can actually, with one control, you can add multiple lights. Now there's a third light that is the directional light. I guess I could add that. I'll do that. It kind of just uniformly adds, it just kind of uniformly lights up your whole image. So let me do directional here. Let me close. Let me just put some text so we can see it. I'll say directional. And this one is going to actually, it's just going to simulate like the sun from an infinite distance almost. So that was this third one here. So it's actually hard to, let me just light 3 actually. Light 1 I wanted to be a spotlight. Yeah. And light 3 was my directional light. So this is my directional light here. And it just really, it just kind of uniformly lights up your whole image. So I'll undo that. Mostly I'm just going to stick with spotlight and point light for today, just because I think it's easier. So let me just get those two things going. So we have our spotlight, which I accidentally made like really big there. So as you can see, these controls, I can control the cone of light there. Hi Bill. Hi Only Sajad. And I'll kind of show you how to think about these controls in a second. And I'll go back and I'll do my point light. Add. Let's make the second one point. Let's put it there. Now if I go back to my spotlight, one thing, this is the spotlight on the left, by the way. So we have all these controls, and there's kind of the way these controls work is you see these terms over here, direction, azimuth, elevation, all this kind of stuff. And you may wonder, like, what is azimuth and elevation and direction and all that kind of stuff? And what really helps is to kind of think of how you're moving the lights. When we do this type of lights, this is kind of the simulation of how the light is working. So what we're really doing is we're moving this point here around in space. So azimuth is kind of the angle it is on our canvas, and elevation you can kind of think of as where the light is in the sky. So if it's 90 degrees, it's going to be completely above. So let's go back to our photo here. So let's just look at elevation for the moment. So reminder, elevation is this angle here, okay? So it's kind of how high it is. If I go to 90 degrees, I'm straight up and down. And in fact, if we look at our thing here, elevation, if I make it 90, you can see it's like the middle point is right directly above. So I'm kind of moving the point here, and 90 degrees is I'm looking right down onto my surface here. So that's what the elevation is going to be doing. Okay, and you can use them with this online control, or you can use it with the on canvas control, or with the controls over here. So that was the elevation. Azimuth is kind of our rotational angle. So here I'm rotating around my center points here. So azimuth, that's what I'm changing right now. If you see the azimuth changing over here, azimuth is where I am, kind of my rotational angle around the center point on the plane of my image. All right. So it's kind of one of those things you have to like play with a little bit just to get used to it. It's kind of, these terms you may not be familiar with, but as you kind of start to use it, you get familiar with it. But it's definitely frustrating because sometimes you want to click this and you'll be like, I want this to move in a direction. You click this middle button here and you think you want it to do what this one is doing. So it takes a little bit of experimentation, but you kind of get the hang of it after a little while. With the point light, if I add that in, we're really just kind of changing the radius of it. That's the main control. There's not a lot of kind of stuff happening with that one. So that's a relatively much more simple one. Now, kind of one of the useful use cases for the lights, I think, is that, I think they're really good at helping you kind of just accent light that's already in an image. And kind of the old way a lot of people used to do lights, maybe you do this too, is you just kind of draw a rectangle Yeah, and then maybe you put some type of gradient on it. So it starts off like this. You got a gradient, maybe you make it like a radial gradient, and you set it to some type of blend mode, like soft light maybe. Maybe want to have a yellow light. And you know, that kind of looks like a light if you want. Maybe I want to have it like that or something. So, you know, you can create lights this way, just using a gradient on a shape on a blend mode. But I think these controls here, they give you a little more power, especially when it comes to color and things like that. So I showed you how to add multiple lights. And let's talk about the controls a little bit more now. We just talked about the directional ones. So again, the spotlight is going to have the most complex controls. The point light is fairly simple. Again, it's just the, that's my second one here. The point light is just kind of this radius. That's the main thing. So let's go back to our first light. Let me turn on my labels. So we talked about the azimuth and elevation, which you can control over here, or you can just control with the on-canvas controls here, like that. Now we also have this cone here, which kind of, we have two cones, the inner cone and the outer cone, and these are specified over here. And this kind of allows us to change the radius of our light so we can get really kind of focused and sharp. Let's get in there. So it's very kind of a tight light there if you want. Maybe, I'm not sure if that's fully appearing, but you can kind of see I have like this inner radius that's doing a subtle light there, and then I have the outer radius. I don't know if that's technically like the penumbra and umbra, if you want to kind of put a technical term on it, but you know, you can have this cone be as tight as you want, and you can adjust the softness of the edges. It's kind of how I would describe that as happening there. So you can see this inner one is the softness of the edge there, and this outer one is the overall cone of light. So I think it helps to really think of these things in terms of like 3D, like thinking of your points as I'm above the canvas. This one here is, you know, where are you above the canvas? I'm moving the sun directly 90 degrees above, and then I'm moving it sideways off to the side. And then this other one is, you know, my angular position around the center point there. So I find that helps to think of it in terms of that way. Now we have all these other controls here, right, which are the all the colors. So what do these mean? Let's check that out. I think the ambient light is probably the easiest one to understand. And let me turn off the point light for now. I'll just turn this off. Whoops. I'll remove that. And let's just turn off our point light. So we just have one light now. Now, by the way, the reason you would add multiple lights instead of just adding multiple filters, if I add another, you may have noticed when I turned the lighting filter on, it kind of made my image darker, right? So if I add the lighting filter, what it does is it makes the area outside of your cone of light darker. If I add another lighting filter, it's going to make the area outside of that one darker too. So when you stack these multiple lighting filters together, they kind of, the darkness kind of adds up. So there are ways around that, but it's kind of a little cumbersome. So you can just use one lighting filter and use that to add multiple lights that way. When you add the multiple lights this way, the darknesses don't stack up on top of each other. So you're getting, you're not darkening your image when you add another lighting filter. But let's look at some of these settings here. And kind of, you know, there's the technical description for all these things, but really the easiest way is to just kind of look at what they actually do. Some of them affect more of the point light than the spotlight, and vice versa. I guess in that sense, I should have kept my my point light on. Let's add a point light back in. So if we look at the point light here, I can change the diffuse here. Well, actually, correct. Let me go back on that. These are controlling all of our lights, actually up here. So these controls are affecting everything we have. So light 1 and light 2. So and as you go below here, that's just affecting the individual lights. So for example, if I change the ambient color, this is just the color that's in the random light that's kind of bouncing around our image by default. Right now it's white, but I can change it to another color here. And you can kind of think of this as like just the overall tint of the image. This is your ambient color, and you can make it strong and as weak as you want. You know, 100% is very strong, but this is going to be the color that's showing up in your darkness here, the ambient light. So if you want to make it darker and creepy like that, you can do that. Or you can just keep it white. And if it's just white, that'll just determine how dark your area outside your light is. So if you want it to be fully dark outside there, you can turn the ambient all down to 0. And I think maybe if I ambient to 0, it's easier to see what the other lights do. So then we have the diffuse light here. So this is just kind of like how much of our light is kind of bouncing around of our image outside of that. And you have shininess, which is really like kind of like how much of the sharpness of the edge. And these things interact with each other too. So specular and shininess are often like used as opposites to each other, I believe. But they have multiple controls here. But I'd really just kind of say like play with it. You know, you can see if I do specular very high, this is the one that gives me more of a sharp edge with a high specular. And if I reduce shininess, it's going to be just a very fine point there. But these are ones, again, I would just kind of say play with them. I don't mess with them too much. You know, if you know kind of the material characteristics of what you're shining light on, maybe you'll want to play with these a little bit more. You can also change the color. This has a, I guess, not so subtle effect on that one, but I'll just leave it white for now. So these are the those controls there. Essentially, it's how, you know, the sharpness of the edge of your shape. And by the way, something I want to just mention about the point light is note that this boundary isn't the boundary of the light. So the light is still going beyond the edge of that boundary there, but this is just kind of the control for it, okay? So that's something to notice about that one. So let's look at some actual images instead of just this texture here. Close this. Let me know also if you guys have like used this filter before, if you find any use for it or not. Like I said earlier, I think one of the best uses for it is just kind of increasing the light that's already in an image. And I think this is an image where I would probably first adjust the levels, because you can see it's very gray here. So I would add a levels adjustment. We've talked about this a little bit before, so levels are a type of adjustment. So I'll click levels. And what you can see if you look at the levels is there's just no dark color here. This is all empty, right? So that means we're not getting any pure blacks. So we can have adjust the black level and make it a little darker there. So this isn't really to do with lighting. I mean, it is, but it's not the lighting filter, but I just wanted to show you that. Kind of just a practical use for the levels adjustment. Now we can add a light. So let's add a spotlight. So I'll do lighting. And you can kind of just experiment really to see like what you like. So maybe I want to make this seem like it's glowing a little bit more. So I could widen that up a little bit. So maybe I just want to have more light coming from this side here. I'll have it go that way. And you know, we can change the blend modes of these lights also, by the way. So the blend modes are down here. And you know, there's normal, but a very common thing is, of course, to use the lighting blend modes. So maybe soft light is one I kind of like a lot. So I'll click soft light. So let's see what it looks like before and after. So this is before, after. It's pretty subtle. It actually made it kind of increased the contrast a little bit. But we could also change the color of it. So if I want to warm up my image a little bit, I could give it a warmer type of light. It's going a little green. And like I said earlier, you can always change the opacity. So I can adjust the opacity down. So if I don't want it to be too crazy powerful, I can dial it down to like 50, 60% or something. And we can try the other blend modes too. Any other ones look good. Normal, like I said, normal here looks very, it just takes the color and it just is too powerful. But if you do something like soft light, you still get like some of your original colors shining through. So these are the adjustments we did. So before, after, before, after. And just the lighting by itself was, let's look at that. So before, after. We kind of warmed it up a little bit, I would say. It's kind of a nice way to warm something up in your image, or just change it in one, you know, direction or the other in terms of warms and cools. Let's get another one. This is another image where I'd probably, in my opinion, just my personal style, I would kind of increase the contrast a little bit to begin with. So we can add a levels adjustment. I'll say levels. And once again, you can see we just have like no black there, so we can kind of darken it up a little bit. And this one, I kind of saw one of the examples on the Affinity channel. I thought it was kind of cool. Like if you wanted to do a design of maybe something like in the woods, like maybe just kind of some, I don't know, futuristic design or something like that. You know, you could have a, let's say you had a circle here and you want it to like glow. So you could add an FX for it. So we talked about this a little bit in the past. I'll add an FX there. And I'll just add a outer glow here. And I can increase the radius. And oftentimes it's good to change the color. So I think things look nice when they glow when the center is white and then the glow color is something different, like magenta or something. So I'll kind of do this magenta here. It's kind of a strong effect. But you can see like it's still, maybe overall the image, we want to add some type of lighting effect overall. So this is a perfect example to use our lighting filter. So I'll select the live filters here. I'll select lighting. And I think this would be a good example of using the point light. So I'll select point. You know, we can increase it a little bit. And maybe we can make it like, I mean, this is super strong, so we can dial down the strength a little bit. Maybe we can change the color to like blue or something. I think also like the blend modes are something we'd want to work with. So let's try soft light again. Maybe the opacity can go up. So we can experiment with different colors here and kind of see what adds style to our image. Let me go full opacity for a second. I'll put this up here. So again, this will kind of like depend on your style, like what you want to accomplish. Let's try the lighting. So I think that's kind of like a nice contrast between like, you know, blue and kind of purple there. And you could keep on working this image if you wanted. And you could also like adjust the masking. So like I said, I could add a mask to my lighting filter. Let's like my brush. What type of brush am I using? And maybe like in the middle of the circle, the effect is a little bit less maybe. Maybe it's stronger out there. So just kind of, you can just adjust the colors like that. But really the key thing is, you know, you can just add a color tinge to your whole image if you like. Another example of masking is, like I said before, like a major case is kind of just like adding light to a particular part of your image to accentuate something. So this would be an example of maybe in the past you would manually make this center area a little bit more brighter. But like with using the point light, you could do that quite quickly. Just add a lighting filter. I'll make it a point light. So maybe you wanted this to be like, you know, look like it's glowing a little bit more in her hand or something like that. And I think in this situation, this would be a good situation for like using the mask. Okay, so I'll add a mask to it. And you know, if her hand had something that was light in it, the bottom of her hand and everything her hand is blocking would be in darkness. So we could select the brush. I'll select black. Yeah, and we can like mask out the area that might not be getting affected by the light there. Like all this maybe. All this area wouldn't be affected by the light. So Dandy, reading your question, could a point light work well with typography as a way of putting a sparkle point on an individual letter? Or would you use something else? It's possible. I think the thing about the light is it's not going to... I would probably use like a sparkle shape and then add a glow to it. You could add you could start with you could add a point light around it. You know, that might work well. But I think fundamentally you'd probably need to start with some type of... I guess if you did like a really fine-tuned... like really tight point light, you could do something like that. But usually with sparkles, I see like a star shape or something that kind of is the basis of it. And then they do kind of a glow effect around it. But you could do like a star shape and then do like a point light behind it or something. So it's possible. I guess here in this example, like the light would be kind of blocked here. So how does this look? So you could do something like this, and of course you could touch it up a little bit more. But like this kind of shows you, you don't have to just take the light and use exactly what it's giving you. You can actually, this is what the light is doing by default. You're free to, you can use the light to get some nice initial work done, and then you can just add a mask in to kind of make it look a little bit cleaner. Skylywag, you're saying you think you could use the same thing with lens flares. Yeah, that'd definitely be a situation for that. And when do I go with curves versus levels? Yeah, this is something in one of my recent streams I chatted about this a little bit. It's more just like a style thing. Technically, the curves tool lets you do more, but just for a simple example like that, I just wanted to use levels because I just knew the black point. I just wanted to show you guys that gap there. But if I have that image open again, let's turn this off. If I added curves, I could do a similar thing. I would just darken it this way. And this is kind of effectively, this is basically here doing the similar thing where when you drag this down like this, it's kind of the same as what we were doing with the levels where we were, well now it's, I turned on my curves, so if I need to turn this off. Let's reset it here. Yeah, so it's essentially the same as like that. When you ground the bottom of your curve, to the black point, it's basically the same as dragging the black level over here. It's just the curves allow you to do a little more fine grain control, but it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So they're both fine if you like one over the other. It's no big deal. I use kind of both. So yeah, thanks for the question. Let's look at something. This is kind of more of an edge case, but I think it's kind of an interesting thing. And you may have noticed on the lighting filter, we have this bump map concept down here, right? So what does that mean? Well, we can actually do a little bit of 3D effects here, but we need to use an actual graphic that's prepared for that. So let me show you that. How are we doing for time? Whoops. So let me open up an image here. So I downloaded this file, and this is a bump map. And what it does is the red, green, and blue data, it actually contains like directional information about our surface. So when we actually are able to load it into something, we can use the lighting effects, and it will actually think our image has 3D properties. The light will actually behave in a 3D manner. So what does all this mean? Let's actually create something with it. So I'll just create a new image here. I'll create, I don't know, 2000 by 2000 sounds kind of good. I'll create, and I'll add a pixel layer, and I'll fill it with, I don't know, just gray or something. So I'll add a lighting filter to it. And what I'm going to do now, my mouse is kind of jumping around, is now I'm going to click this button down here, Load Bump Map. And that's the file I just showed you. So I'll click this, and where is it here? It's on, let me just navigate to it on my computer. It's almost there. So the file I'm opening this file I just showed you here. So I'm saying open. And I've loaded the bump map. Now, by default, it does nothing. So the tricky thing is you have to remember to change the texture. If it's 0 pixels, it thinks your bump map is 0 pixels high. So if I change the dimension here, now you can see we're actually getting a 3D effect here on the canvas. And the really awesome thing is, as I drag my light around, look how it's actually reacting to the surface, okay? So this is actually it's actually acting like a 3D surface using that bump map there. And I believe it works with all types of light. I mean, it should work with point light also. So this is the point light. So here I am moving the light around. I can make the light smaller. Now gray is kind of boring. I could go to my pixel layer, and I could add some type of gradient. Let me turn off the light. If I wanted, I don't know, red. Maybe like a darker red. What does this do? So yeah, it's kind of cool. So like this is definitely a situation where you could, if you had some type of graphic or something where you wanted to give it a 3D look, you could actually do this type of thing to it. Let's load another bump map. So there's another one. Let me show you the website I went to also. It's a cool website. And you can Google like free bump maps or something like that. But I went to this one here. So they have all these images you can download. And when you click on one, like this armor one, this is kind of the demo image they give you. And then if you go to the, somewhere there's a link you can click. Yeah, if you click here, it brings you to a Google Drive. And what you want to do is you want to download the normal map. So the normal means it's the technical term is the vectors that are saying what direction the faces are pointing on your image. So I actually downloaded that one. Let me open it here for you guys. So this is kind of like this leather armor one. So let me try that. So I'll go here. Let's go back to our lighting. I'll load that bump map. And you can see it's kind of like this effect here. It almost looks like armor or something like that. And I can change the texture is going to change how high it is, essentially. This one's okay. It wasn't as great as one of the other ones. But I think this is like actually pretty cool if you want, again, if you want to do like a book cover or something and you want to simulate like some type of, you want to dynamically update the lighting on your image to kind of show this, like maybe it's some type of fantasy book or something like that. You know, this could be your background. You could position the lights. You can do spotlight, of course. We could have multiple lights here. So maybe one light like that. Add another light. Maybe this light is red or orange or blue. So all sorts of like interesting things you can do with the bump mapping effect there. One other trick I wanted to show you guys. I saw this on a YouTube video. I can't remember which one it was, but it was a good example of this. Sometimes the initial effect of an image is too strong. I thought I had a better image than this. I guess not. So sometimes the initial, let me load another image with that. Let's do this one. So what you can do is if you can add the light here. So let's add the lighting effect. And I'm just like making a light effect just to show it. What you can do is you can actually add a fill layer above it and kind of play with it a little bit to minimize some of the effect if it's too strong. So what does all this mean? Let me add a pixel layer here. I'll fill it to black. And I'll add my lighting filter to above that. So maybe I have a point light here. Actually, I'll drag it in here. And what you can actually do is you can set the blend mode of this pixel layer to something like screen or soft light. So if I go to screen here, you can actually put it on this layer above and it will kind of minimize the effect a little bit. I guess in this example it doesn't show off that well. Let me try and just one like this. Let me fill this with black. Let me know if you guys think like the lighting filter is something that could be useful for your designs or something like that. Yeah, so here it's like really strong. Let me make it orange. If I set this blend mode to something like screen, it can minimize the effect a little bit. So let me copy this one over to the other one. So yeah. Maybe I just want to have it be subtle like this. So the key thing is like, this is my layer here. I'm putting it on the layer above and just like setting it to, on a black layer, just setting the blend mode to screen. And it can kind of like minimize the effect a little bit. So what would this lighting layer do if I just put it directly on my image? Yeah, so this is the lighting effect by itself. So you can see it's very strong here. If I want to back it off a little bit, you can put the lighting effect on a pixel layer that's totally black, set it to screen, and it'll kind of dampen it a little. So this is kind of the effect by it. This is the layer by itself. And then when I screen it below, it's kind of pulling back the strength of it a little. So there's kind of a little trick I saw that's kind of interesting. So that's the main features of the lighting filter. Like I said, I think it's a good alternative to just kind of taking a rectangle and like dragging it over your image, doing a gradient, you know, and what do we do for a gradient? We make it like, you know, white and black, make it radial. And then, you know, we just do some type of soft light or something like that. You know, it's possible to keep doing this method, but I think the lighting controls, they give you a little more power in certain things in terms of how you do them. So it's a little, again, it's a little, that one's super strong, of course, but gives you a little more flexibility in terms of things, I think. So it's kind of another tool in your toolbox. So that was the lighting live filter. Hope it was useful. And let me know if it's something you think you might use, or if you have used it. That's you know, give us your feedback on it if you think it's something worth using. So with that, I'll go into the Q&A section here. Somewhere here, yeah. Excuse me. So this week I released a video about some font tips, and I used this this font here, Horror World. I thought it was kind of cool. Halloween is coming up. So I got this question or comment. Someone said that the website DaFont has a free version of the font. So yeah, that's definitely true. I found that I updated the description to point that out. The only thing you have to be careful about with a site like that is that typically the fonts, they only allow personal use. So yeah, so if you want to just play with the font and experiment, you can download it from here. That's fine. But this is only for personal use. So I believe, like, you know, if you're going to do book covers or something you're going to sell, you're not allowed to use it for that. So you'd have to go through and you'd have to buy it somewhere, either here or on Creative Fabrica or something like that. So yeah, if you just want to follow along with that video, definitely you can download the font for free there. But if you want to use it for professional stuff, something you'll make money from, you'll need to buy the license on it. So good point. I updated the description there, so hopefully people can download it and experiment with it. I got this question about kind of the permissions when you embed an image in Affinity programs or something like that. And Briera, she says that she was having trouble putting graphics in her projects because whenever she like opened it, it would ask for permission. And I think it's really it comes down to like the share drive you're using. If it's some type of, I don't know if it's iCloud or whatever, it might not like that. I haven't used that. I use Google Drive, and so far I don't run into that issue, but it's certainly possible that maybe, you know, it's trying to access the file on some drive where you have to re-authenticate or re-log in. So I think she replied to my comment on that, and she said that's basically what it was. So if you're having that issue, that might be the problem. It's just like, I don't think it's an Affinity thing. I think it's just like an operating system and share drive thing that can affect that. So I hope that gets fixed, or hope that is easier now that you know what the solution is. And he got this question from Andrew Phillips. Said, can you show how to install the spelling dictionaries and the options for the spelling dropdown and how they work? I'm not an expert on this topic, but I did find a good Affinity forum post on how to do it. Let me provide the link here. I think this is the best one that I saw. The Affinity forums have a good description of this, but basically the concept is you're adding dictionaries to the program. So these are the things that control the languages, the spelling check for the languages. And probably a lot of you guys, you know, from Europe and other countries like that, maybe you've had to deal with this before, like installing additional dictionaries for your language because maybe it's not supported by default. So let me know if that's something like you've dealt with. But here, if you just Google this topic, this post should come up. And they describe pretty well how to do it. In terms of like the settings for the dictionaries, I haven't done much with it. The only spell check thing I do is just like, I just ignore it. I just right click and ignore when it gives me false positives on things that like names that it doesn't recognize or something like that. That's the most sophisticated thing I do with the spelling. But this this article here seems pretty good. Again, I'm not sure what the South African abbreviation is, but it seems like they have a pretty good list here. So again, I would Google this topic, and they're talking about Affinity Publisher, but I assume it's the same for everything else. So yeah, I would say check that out, and hopefully that helps with the South African English. So I got this question: is there any way the canvas can be increased while working on something in Affinity Designer, and if so, how? So Dexter asked that. Yep, it's super simple once you know where to look. I'll just create a document here. So I just created a document, and basically you just go to File, Document Setup, and then you can just change the dimensions here. So I have 11 by 8.5. If I wanted, I could make it 20. So I did that. I guess the button's also up here. If you have the move tool, you also have document set up here. So you can just click this, and you can easily change your image. It's super simple to change the dimensions of your image. So yeah, that button there, or just File, Document Setup, and change it there. You can also use the Artboard tool if you like. So you can click the Artboard there, and you can re-drag it that way. So that's another one. If you're comfortable with artboards, you can do that method also. So this is the artboard button right there. And then as you do stuff, you can go back and you can modify it if you like. And if you want to have it super specific, down here is where you can change the artboard dimensions. So if you know exactly, I want 10 inches by 10 inches. Let me move this where you guys can see it. I want a 10 inch by 10 inch artboard. I can just type it in there. So that's another way to do it. So that is that one. I got this comment from Pierre. I think it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment. Where are the typography tips for this video? Yeah, I called the video, the title on YouTube was Typography Tips. I guess technically what I showed in the video wasn't really typography. Like typically when people think typography, it's like glyphs and ligatures and kerning and tracking and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't really do that yet. I think in a future video I will though. So, you know, if you're a typography purist, maybe this video wasn't what you expected. But I will go over those topics more because there are more advanced typography things. And it seems like the comments, the people in this video really wanted to see more of that type of video. So I will make more videos on kind of using fonts and getting the most out of them. Kind of the whole concept of the video is that when you download a font, it just looks kind of boring by default, right? So you kind of have to learn how to make it look like it does in the description, like in the thumbnail of the product where you downloaded it from, like Creative Fabrica or DaFont or wherever you got it from. Usually the font just doesn't look that great when you use it by itself. So you kind of need to know some tricks. So I'll do some more videos like this. Let me know if you guys had any thoughts on this video here, in the kind of like what you'd want to see more of that in that topic. No problem, Dandy. So I got this question. This was another video I made, I don't know, a month or so ago about using gradients as masks. And I got this question from Julia. She said she can't get it to work. The white point of the gradient stays white even when the rectangle is nested beneath the layer I want to mask. So let's look at this one. And let's kind of review like what's happening here, just because I know not everyone's familiar with it. So in Affinity Designer, I have this apple here, and you can see it's transparent. I kind of gave it a blue background just so you can see. We have something called the transparency tool, which is kind of cool. It's just glass here, but it's not in all the tools. But something we often want to do is like add a mask to something, and maybe you want to do like a gradual fade out effect. So in a mask, you can use the gradient tool here, and I can click and drag, and if I make it totally black, you can see that I'm actually able to fade out my apple. So I used a gradient on the mask. The white part is going to be completely solid. So that's this. You're seeing the white part up here is the white part of the gradient is going to be totally solid, and the black part is transparent. So that's how masks work, right? Now the only issue with this is that when you click off and you go back to it, you don't have that gradient control anymore. I can add another gradient, but I can't like actually alter. I don't see that gradient canvas control that I saw earlier. And it's kind of an annoying thing. I would sometimes get questions about how to make that work. And the answer is that you actually, there's kind of a way to do it. Let me delete this. You can use a vector as a mask. So if I take this vector here, if I add a gradient to this vector, let's make it, I'll make it white here. I'll make it black here. Now this looks like what we just did. So if you kind of are familiar with some of these things, you may think, if I take the rectangle and I drag it over the apple here, so over here I'm going to take the rectangle, I'm going to drag it over the icon, and I'm going to let go. And it looks like it should be a mask, but it's actually not. And the reason it's not is because when you do this type of thing, when you use a vector as a mask, it doesn't work on levels of black and white. It works on levels of transparency. So the fact that this is black here doesn't matter for this mask. But what does matter is if I select this point, if I make it transparent, now that will actually allow me to make a mask for my shape here. Okay, so it's a kind of a subtle difference. And the cool thing about this is that if I click off, if I go do other stuff and then I come back later, if I click the gradient tool, I still have that gradient there, and I can change it around like this. So it's kind of a little minor tip, but some people, they have a problem with this, and I think there's a couple ways you could have a problem with it. One is you forget that when you create this gradient, it's not about black and white. So it's not about being black and white like this. It's about being levels of transparent. So I mean, I could make this white color like anything. I could make it that. But as long as I made that black part transparent, then if I drag it on here, it's going to be a gradient, right? It only cares about solid and transparent. The other thing that people have trouble with, my mouse is jumping, is that they take this thing and they drag it over the name here, and then they let go. And that's an issue too. So when you do this, let me drag it back out again. You have to drag it over the thumbnail image here to make a mask, not the name. Okay, so I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna drag it over the thumbnail image, I'll let go, and it's working there. So I think in this case, I would say two things. A, make sure your mask is levels of transparency, not black and white. So change the black points to something transparent. And two, make sure you're actually dragging over the thumbnail here, not the name. Because if you drag over the name, that does a different thing. That clips it to the area of your image. So yes, that is it's kind of a tricky little thing, but it's a good question. So I hope that answers it for Julia. Similarly, this is another question I get often. How do you taper an image in Affinity Designer from Virtual Whispers? I wasn't sure exactly what he meant at first, but he meant how do you change the perspective of an image. So let's look at an example of that. So I have this image of the Northern Lights. I didn't actually see them in person this year, but I saw lots of pictures online of people who did. Looked like it was pretty cool. So something you may, probably the first thing you'll try when you do this is you'll select an image, and then you'll see, I'm in Affinity Designer by the way, you'll see, oh, there's this warp tools down here. Makes sense. Let's click the warp group. There's one called perspective. Cool, let's click that. I'll click perspective. And now if I drag this thing around, it's not really doing what you want at all. You expect this to bend the thing, right? But it's not doing that. And this actually does work with vectors. So if I create a vector here, let's just create a star. I'll create a star. If I have my vector shape selected here, if I go to the warp group, if I select perspective, I can actually bend the vector. And it works, it works perfectly fine. And that's what the tool is designed to do. It's designed to warp vectors, and you can do it with text also. So the question remains, how do we actually do this in with an image here? Well, in Affinity Designer, the thing we have to do is go to the pixel persona for that tool. So the pixel persona is this button up here. And it's kind of like a light version of Affinity Photo. It kind of just gives us some of the options there. So if I click that, I'm in a different layout now. And you can see the tools have changed. And the key tool we want is the perspective live filter. Okay, so that's going to be up here, layer. And then it's new live filter layer, and then perspective. And this perspective is actually going to do what we want on an image. So I'll click this. And now I can actually move and bend my image. I can taper it down if I want. He said taper in his question, so we want something like that, I guess. But this is going to actually let you do this for an image in Affinity Designer. And it's kind of strange, like, I don't know. It'd be cool if it was just there in the other persona, but it's not. So this is the way you have to do it in Affinity Designer if you want to do an image like this. So just to review, if you're here in this persona, you have to go to the pixel persona with this selected. Let me delete it. With this selected, you go to layer, new live filter layer, and then perspective. So it's a handy tool, but it's just kind of buried there. So it's a feature that not a lot of people know you can do in this program. So that's that one. So hopefully that answers your question, Virtual Whispers. And I made another video on seamless patterns from Doug here, Garcia, and he was saying that there's this feature I use a lot in Affinity programs, in Affinity Designer, called Clip to Canvas. And what he's saying is it's not there in his program. So let me show you what that does. Let's use this example again. So Clip to Canvas is the feature where if you have a shape or anything, I can drag it on, and I can actually, like, by pressing the slash key, I can show what's off my canvas. So if I have other stuff here, you know, test text or whatever. A lot of times I like to just have stuff sitting outside that I'm going to use later, you know, like shapes and things like that, you know, references or other photos or stuff. I can hide this area or not. So I'm pressing the slash key. So the key I'm pressing is this key here. This is on Windows. So I'm pressing that key to, like, toggle on and off. And you can also do it through view mode, clip canvas. And you see that's that option here. Now, Affinity Photo actually doesn't have this feature. It has something else called clip canvas, which we saw last week. It's kind of a way of trimming your canvas. So when he says he only has the clip canvas option, what I believe is happening is he is seeing this feature here. Now, let me create a new thing here. What that does, let me show you what that does. That just creates the smallest bounding box that contains all of your shapes. So if I go to Document, Clip Canvas, you can see what it did. It reset my canvas so that it just contains the things in it. So everything to the left of the red square got cut off. Everything outside of the blue circle got cut off, and same thing with the green circle down here. It's very hard to look at a shape and say the color at the same time. But that's what Clip Canvas does. So it's very similarly named, but I think the question is coming from someone who's actually using Affinity Photo and not Affinity Designer. So yeah, the one I like is the and he says it doesn't have view mode. So my suggestion is make sure you're in Affinity Designer, not Affinity Photo. But it's an easy mistake to make because you kind of assume they should have the same thing, but they don't a lot of the time. And I think that was the last question I had. So that was all I had for this week. How are we doing for time? 54 minutes, our usual time. Let me know what you guys think of live filters. I'll stay on for another couple minutes or so. In terms of this week, I have some videos coming out, just kind of some shorter videos, but I did one on procedural textures. We did a live stream on that a couple weeks ago, and it was a live stream, so I kind of put it into more like a video form so people could review it. I created a new video for it, so that will be out soon. Scallywag, reading your question. What does the rubber band mode with the pen tool in a photo do? It doesn't seem to behave like it does with the pencil tool. Yeah, so my understanding, let's look at that. I believe it's the same in both programs, so I'll just do this. So with the pen tool here, the rubber band tool, if I remember correctly, which one is it? It's this one. I think it just shows like where you're going next. So if I turn off the rubber band effect, it doesn't give me that preview. But if I turn it on, I can kind of see like where I'm going. So that's my interpretation of it. No problem, Hector. With the pen tool, let me try with the pen tool. Rope mode. I don't see. Yeah, so there's rope mode. So that's what with the pencil tool. You can do rope mode, and I think I want to do it longer here. I thought I kind of let you drag like a thing around there. Yeah, this is the rope mode, is what I thought that was. So Scallywag, I'm not sure if this is what you're asking about, this tool here. So the rope mode on the pen tool is different than the rubber band mode on the pen tool. So the rubber band mode on the pen tool is just kind of giving you a preview of where you're going. So let me know if that answers your question. That's kind of my how I see those two things being used. Yeah, so Scallywag, that was it. Okay, hopefully that helped. So I have the procedural textures video coming out and the gimmick video also coming out. And I'll do some more font videos as well. And yeah, I'm also working on a bigger thing too, which will something that's much been requested. So that will be coming out. Well, I have to finish writing it. So that's the first step. But yeah, I think next week might be more of just a QA session. So certainly if you are watching this stream, you want more questions answered next week, let me know. Thanks for watching Sekhmet Terra, and thanks for watching everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you next week. Have a good one.